Welcome to the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. My name is Lewis Gray and I'm joined today by Bradley Keenan. This is part 2 of a 2-part episode. So in episode 1, we spoke about LinkedIn's algorithm changes and how that can potentially affect employee advocacy platforms positively. And today we're going to be speaking about how you can use what we learned in that first episode to write better post captions for your employee advocacy program.
Can I just say what an amazing job you did, Lewis, at introducing the podcast? It's the first time I haven't done it, so I feel very emotional that you did it, you nailed it, and I just feel like I'm sending my kid off to university and you're completely self-sufficient at this point. So I think when I'm not on the podcast, I think the next episode I'm not going to be, I think I just feel like you're ready.
Are we going to pretend for the listeners' sake that was my first time trying? Or are we going to...
Well, no, because, but we can say that was your first time.
Okay.
Yeah, we just cut one out that Lewis did because he sounded a bit nervous, but now he's fine. Now we're fine. Do we summarise the key takeaways from the LinkedIn algorithm change before we go into talking about post captions? Because I do want to get right into the meat of this episode.
Definitely, yeah. So the main takeaway is basically that LinkedIn has said that it's now prioritising posts that offer knowledge and advice. 4 things that make that up. So the first thing is the post speaks to a distinct audience. Second thing is that the author is writing in their core subject area. Thirdly is the post has meaningful comments. And then lastly, the post has a unique perspective. We summarized all that and created an acronym which is PACKD, P-A-C-K-D. So that's perspective, advice, core subject area, knowledge, and distinct audience.
If that's not on a carousel by the end of next week, Lewis, I'm disappointed.
100%.
That's got carousel written all over it.
Yeah,
five steps, and then it's yours.
I'm going to see my face on TikTok because I feel like Selena will chop it up and it's going on TikTok. I won't know about it. I'll just be scrolling my feed and then... alas, my face will be.
I can't wait. And for those who didn't listen to the first episode, obviously we would encourage you to do it. If you didn't, then the reason why we're creating this episode is actually a client contacted me and asked about the LinkedIn algorithm changes and basically saying, is this going to affect our reach? And actually we see it as the opposite. It's a huge opportunity to take what LinkedIn are telling you directly. So this isn't gurus on LinkedIn who have analysed 15 posts and think they understand the algorithm, which is what... I mean, when I see these things on LinkedIn, often it's like, I studied 500 posts. Like, 500 posts in the sea of LinkedIn is not statistically significant to make these assumptions. So getting it directly from LinkedIn should be the holy grail for anyone looking to... they've literally just given you the blueprint of success. So to ignore it would seem silly. So let's talk about post captions, and we talk about it all the time. So should we talk about what is a post caption, and for those people who are thinking what are these guys talking about?
Yeah, definitely. So when we refer to post captions, we're talking about the text that's used in a social media post, regardless of the content used. So if you're sharing an image, video, link, or whatever, the post caption is the text that accompanies that social media post. The reason they're so important, and people forget this all the time, is because the post caption should essentially serve as a trailer for the piece of content that you're actually trying to direct direct people to. The example that I often use is if you're trying to share a research paper because you want people to click that link, and that research paper is gated by a form, you need to do enough with your post caption to get them excited about that piece of content and to want to fill in that form. Otherwise, you're just sharing that link and you're expecting people to be excited about something they know nothing about, realistically speaking, unless you're maybe a McKinsey company of the world where everybody wants to read your research anyway. You need to do something to get people excited about that content. So with a research paper, you can pull out some key findings, you can summarize it, just get some meaty bits from that paper, maybe some key statistics, and then just throw that into your social post and use it, or throw it into your post caption and use it as an opportunity to get people excited and increase the chances that they're actually going to click through to that content.
I think the thing that it reminds me of is, and this is probably going to be a bit before your time, so I feel like an old man saying, gather round children while I tell you a tale of the past. But years ago, we had these things called content aggregators, which is basically what kind of LinkedIn became. So it was like take your LinkedIn feed, your Facebook feed, your Twitter feed, and put them all into one feed, and it was just literally URLs, all the things you're interested in, and in one content aggregator. So there wasn't really the need to, because you were selecting the things you wanted to see, to sell you on the reason to click on that post. But sometimes what I see on LinkedIn is just there's almost no effort going into saying, like, if we think of time as a currency, which I kind of guess it is, and it's the only thing you can't get back, right? We're saying to someone, take the time to click on this link, yet we're not even going to tell you why. We're just going to give you the link and hope that you're just sitting around all day going, God, I wish I had some links to click on today. Like, I've just got so much time I had. If only there was a link I could click on, and then I'll find out what it's about when I get there. That would be a good idea. So it does annoy me when people don't say what value is there in, what value will I get from spending 5 minutes and going to read this piece of content.
Yeah, and it's something that, we always say you see this really in the infant stages of employee advocacy programs, because generally speaking, somebody will intervene and, point this out and then work with them to kind of generate better post captions or help them write better post captions. But generally speaking, it's marketing teams who are writing the captions as well. So these people,
it's madness.
Like you should know obviously how to try to think about, without using the same tone of voice, try to think about what you would use if you were trying to direct people to your piece of content you were sharing on the company page. Obviously don't use the same tone of voice, but try to at least incorporate that thinking into your process when you're writing captions for your colleagues to use, because it's just as important for them to get people excited about that piece of content if their network are going to actually click on it or watch the video or read through the infographic. Whatever the piece of content is, the caption needs to be up to par. You can't fall short there.
And I think it's like thinking of it as an ad, and obviously we're talking about clicking links, but like you said, watching video or even expanding the post, right? So if you write a text-only post, you're only going to get three lines, I think, including space.
Yeah.
So if you're writing some thought leadership and it's paragraphs of content, you need to create something in that, that's going to make someone say, actually, I want to expand this post and read more. So I do find it surprising when people who are trained in marketing don't see that as an ad, because that's what it is. So if you created an ad and you invested, $100,000 in promoting a product, you wouldn't just have the ad as we're selling a drink, or just like click to find out more about the drink, because you're just never going to click on it. So I think thinking about it like that, I think in the show notes, I think you said thinking about it as like a trailer for the content, I think is really important. And the other thing that I think actually goes against advice I've given in the past, but it's just something I've reflected on recently, is when you're creating content, you're creating it typically for a niche. So if you work in the machinery industry, for instance, machinery for specific to, one of my friends does recycling machinery, right? That's extremely niche. So his content is really there for buyers who buy products or machines to recycle products. But actually, the post captions kind of need to appeal to everyone. So if I'm scrolling through the post as someone who's not in his market to buy machinery products, I might still stop and hover over that, because I'm like, actually, that's quite interesting. I might not click on the link, but the fact that I scrolled and stopped for a couple of seconds means that his audience is going to be far more likely to see the content, because the algorithm sees it as this is something that is of interest. So putting jargon in the post is definitely something that people should avoid. But I think I'm jumping ahead now, because I think we've got our common flaws listed out.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect segue. But I just kind of wanted to say before we move on to the common flaws is that I can absolutely understand why this happens, because I guess when people first launch their employee advocacy programs, they're quite excited. They want to see results as quickly as possible. So they're trying to curate as much content for their employees or their colleagues to share. They're trying to curate as much as possible so that they can get some content in their employees' feeds for sharing. So I guess they take less time with the captions, but it's always worth just taking a step back and spending that extra 5 to 10 minutes just writing great captions so that, your content has that trailer, so it'll go the extra mile. But yeah, like I said, Brad, you've teed it up perfectly as we come on to the common flaws and the things that we see quite often that people should definitely avoid when writing captions for their employees. First one, we've spoken about this on the podcast before, but the overuse of words like we and our in the captions. So that could be, we are delighted to announce our new research paper. The company might say that if you're writing a post for your company page, but it's very corporate and it's not the kind of thing that, I don't want to say the average employee, because obviously that's quite a generalization, but the average employee is just not going to speak like that if they were writing a post themselves.
I think it doesn't mean you can never say our or we.
Yeah.
It's just the context. So if we were talking about our research, so let's say DSMN8 done some research, I'm going to say I'm really excited to share our research, because when I'm using the term our, I am using, it's the collective of DSMN8 creating the research. I'm not going to say my research and take full credit for the company. So it's not don't use it, it's just don't overuse it, and don't refer to the action of announcing something as a we. It would be an I as the person who is announcing it.
Yeah, 100% is the context, and that's the best example. It's, if it was we are excited about our something as opposed to I am excited about disseminates something, it just immediately changes the tone of voice. The second thing, we'll get to some good and bad examples, by the way, spoiler alert, so we will visualize this, but the second thing is when people basically just write 2 to 3 lines of text and nothing more. So you've got so much space to work with LinkedIn. I think there is a character limit on LinkedIn, but it's so enormous that I've never met that character limit. You've got loads of space to play around with. Again, use it as time to get people excited. Don't just write a sentence and then click the link below to learn more, because it's not enough. And Brad, like you said before, you're kind of taking the assumption that the user is kind of scrolling looking for links to click, and you've just teed it up with one sentence and be like, oh, here's that link I think you were looking for. It's just, I don't know, you have space, use it. 2 to 3 texts and nothing more, generally speaking, isn't going to be enough unless you've got an infographic that can maybe do the talking, but that's a very rare instance. And then again with the text, no spacing. So Brad, you touched on this a moment ago, but the last thing that is going to get somebody to stop on a post is a big block of black and white text. So you're scrolling your LinkedIn feed, you've got carousels, images, videos, colors left, right, and center, people trying to get your attention. The last thing that's going to get somebody to stop and read is a big block of black and white text, just these huge paragraphs with no spacing. The value could all be there. This is the thing that often frustrates me when I see this, is there's usually so much value in that paragraph, but if you were to just space it out, that first line, for example, just, I don't know, I wish I had an example to call to here, but there's that first line is almost like if it's valuable enough, you want to pull it out of that paragraph so that it stands a purpose by itself, and then people can read the second, and then it's kind of copywriting 101, is to tell somebody something and then something else, and then you build on that point rather than just...
It's like every line should be making someone want to read the next line, and taking them through that journey. I think the issue with this one is everybody. I'm doing those big LinkedIn statements. It's dead. Everyone, loads of people got annoyed, and we've been guilty of this. We do this, probably still do it now. So this is a passive aggressive way of me telling you to stop it, Lewis. Just loads of lines. So it would be like, I woke up today, had a coffee, another space. And I thought to myself, ... right? And everyone got annoyed with these really long posts. So we're not saying do that. It's just break it up in a way that it makes it easy for somebody to read it, in the same way as you would do any creative. Make it easy for someone scrolling through. And we overuse the term, but that scroll stopper is that first line. And if you were going to put thought into any part of the, and as Lewis said, we're going to go through the anatomy of a good post, that scroll stopper is really important, because that's the thing that says, just triggers your brain to say, actually, this might be of interest to me, but I can't call that out in a block of text. I just see a block of text.
Exactly that. Yeah, that's the perfect summary. These two kind of go hand in hand. Is the big blocks of text, is I often see them with the next flaw, which is using too many company hashtags. So I don't think company hashtags are a bad thing. We've actually encouraged the use of them in the past because I think they definitely serve a purpose for like employer branding's sake. You know, you can ask employees if they're sharing behind the scenes content, or maybe you're saying to them, if you're taking photos at this event, use this hashtag. I think hashtags can be great for that reason. But it's when you see 4 or 5 company hashtags that all incorporate the company name and is quite clearly pushing the company agenda is when it kind of sours the grapes a little bit. Because again, if it was 1 or 2, generally speaking, I think your hashtag should be speaking to what that content is talking about. So we went through it in the last episode with the algorithm changes. Is it speaking to a unique audience? One of your hashtags should at least really be just unique to that audience. So if it's a piece of market research, hashtag market research should probably take priority over one of the 5 company hashtags you've chosen to use.
Where do you personally stand on using hashtags in the body of text as opposed to like the summary block at the bottom?
I think it doesn't make a difference in terms of discoverability, because as long as the hashtag's in there, your post is discoverable. So in my mind, it just makes sense to always put them at the bottom.
Right,
I think
I'm the opposite.
I think it makes it harder to read. Like for me personally, and this is subjective because obviously everybody's going to be different, but for me, when I see 3 or 4 hashtags in a block of text, maybe it's not a block of text, it could even be broken up nicely with spacing, but then my eyes kind of always gravitate towards the things that are highlighted in blue.
I think 3 or 4. If it's 1, I think it brings, as you talk about that body of text when you're going through it and it's triggering that part of your brain that's going, oh, maybe this is interesting. I think tagging a person and having a hashtag in the body of text just adds some color to the body of text, so it stops it looking as dull. But like you said, it doesn't make any difference to discoverability. And the other thing I get irks me about hashtags is when people use hashtags that won't help discoverability in any way.
Yeah.
But they create a hashtag and like nobody's searching for what you've just written. So unless you're doing it to be funny, which sometimes it is funny when people put hashtags that aren't, you know, like what I had for breakfast on a Tuesday is the hashtag. And it's like no one's got that set up. So you're just, it's just pure nonsense. So yeah, I would definitely say 2 or 3 max.
Yeah, no, what you've just touched on as well with regards to throwing it in and having something stand out, that could be a nice way if you do have to have maybe a couple of lines of text altogether that might look unengaging. If you're talking about a trending topic, obviously, like you said, it just highlights that one word. Let's say it's AI is all the rage right now. If the hashtag was just artificial intelligence, you saw it in that paragraph, it does make it stand out. So immediately it's like, okay, maybe I'll read this because I know I've seen that already. I know that this paragraph of text is going to be relevant to something I'm interested in.
And I guess just to summarize some of these points is like everything, it's nuance. So when we talk about the scroll stopper, sometimes people just take things so literally into to the extreme that they think a scroll stopper should be something like, wow, you won't believe this. You won't believe what they look like now. Like the viral, the clickbaity type things. It's not about writing clickbait posts to get people to stop. It's just making it easy for someone to understand the value for content. So if they are interested, they will stop. Nuance is the key in this, I think.
100%. So the last 2, which I'll kind of just briefly touch on these ones, but mainly because the first one's a bugbear of mine, which is when admins will write captions for their colleagues to share where the caption directs people to the content. So what I mean by that is they'll be sharing a link, so you don't need to direct people to that link. People know that's what you're talking about. You've shared a link and you've got a caption that's talking about it. What you then don't need to say is learn more via the link below. Maybe if the link is in the comments or something along those lines, then obviously it makes sense because you want to direct them to the link because it's not immediately visible. But if I see somebody sharing a link with a huge image on it that's super engaging, it's like, learn more via the link. It's like, well, it's obviously.
Like they've written it like they're sending someone an email. Please see link below. And then you didn't attach link. Oh, sorry. Here's the link.
Yeah, it's almost as if that's gone through their mind, but that's more a bugbear of mine. But for sure, as a marketer, when I see it, I think somebody else has written that for a person. And the last one is, this kind of ties in with what we were saying about the trailer, but it's just offering no insight into the content you're sharing. So we've kind of touched on this already, but the caption is the trailer. Pull out some key findings from whatever it is that you're sharing, maybe some key points, summarize, have some bullet points in there, just gives people something to get excited about. So what we're going to do now is basically just pull up a couple of social media posts that we've put together. So these aren't real posts, these aren't client posts or anything like that. We're not calling anybody out. We've made up a few people and a few companies, and we've photoshopped together some social media posts on LinkedIn. One we consider to be a bad social media post, and the other we consider to be a good one. And it's really just looking at the captions here, and we're talking about, again, we're honing in on employee advocacy. We really want to get into how to write great captions for your employee advocates. So we're not going to touch on absolutely everything that we covered in part one. We're not going to write the perfect social media post that you need to spend 20 minutes on. We're going to look at the bad one, and we're going to say, okay, how could we make this better by just spending an extra 5 minutes just curating this piece of content. So first up, we've got Billy Namates. He's Greek.
I've only just seen that.
Wait till you see the second one. So Billy Namates here.
I think it's at canary.io. Is that like sending the... Is that like the reference to a canary in a coal mine? Is that, or have you just...
No,
chosen?
see, I was kind of counting on your lack of knowledge of football, because Canaries is the nickname for Norwich City Football Club, which everybody else in the company will know, but I knew I'd be able to get away with it because you wouldn't call me out for it. But yeah, so Billy Namates here is a product engineer at this fake company, canary.io. So for anybody who's not watching the podcast, we will just read through these just so that you don't have to bank on the visual aid. So he's posted new research in big capital letters in brackets. Canary.io proudly releases our new research paper in both PDF and interactive formats. Explore the latest offering via the link below. If you're watching, you can see all the hashtags. If you're just listening, there's just like 5 or 6 company hashtags underneath here. The first thing Billy's done wrong here, or do you know what, I'm not going to call out Billy, because it's whoever has curated this post for him within his company's employee advocacy platform. New research. So this is something that makes sense, or the inclusion, of the new research. It makes sense if you are if you're posting to your company page, just because that's immediately a way to get people excited about something that you're posting. It doesn't really make sense. An employee, generally speaking, again, it's a generalization, but the average employee just wouldn't put something like this. I kind of wanted to get your perspective on this one, Brad, because this, for me, is more of a preference and a bugbear when I see it. But I don't know if that screams somebody else wrote this to you like it does for me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, it's clearly not written by him. I would say on a company page, then yeah, it's totally fine, because if I've opted to follow a company, then I am directly want to be updated by that company. I've chosen, nobody forced me to click follow. I did it. So now I know that company I follow there's some research. So it's a bit more transactional. If I was a prospect for this company and an engineer shared it, I would think it was a bit weird that they wrote new research in brackets, because I've never written that in a post, and it's not how I would speak. Exactly that.
So that's the nuance you were talking about earlier. So it's circumstantial. It depends who's sharing it. Billy here is a product engineer, so it does seem odd when you first see it. Secondly, he's used the word our, or the product admin, or platform admin has used the word our for Billy here. Again, it's the context. Brad, you spoke about this earlier. Because it already looks like it's gotten off to a bad start with it kind of adopting this corporate copywriting technique of new research. It says canary.io proudly releases our new research. So because there's no reference to the first person, it's not I'm happy to see or I'm happy to announce our new research paper, it's referencing the company. So canary.io proudly releases our. So it just immediately kind of reeks of somebody else wrote this. This is a corporate caption, not a personal one. The second one is identifying the 2 different formats. This to me just feels quite irrelevant. It makes sense, again, if it's a company page talking about it, because perhaps it's more accessible if you have it available in different formats. Billy could talk about the accessibility of this piece of content, but generally speaking, it wouldn't be done this way. So again, it's the nuance, it's the way that Billy's spoken about it here, just making a point of speaking about the 2 different formats that the content's available in. One of my biggest bugbears is explore the latest offering via the link below. So for anybody that's just listening and not watching, there is a huge image to accompany Billy's link here. So it's quite obvious that he's trying to direct people to the link. an employee doesn't need to direct people to that piece of content. It's clear to the user. We know how LinkedIn works. It's clear to the user that Billy wants us to click on that link.
So, okay, keep going.
I was going to say the last one is glaringly obvious. Is just use 5 different canary.io related hashtags. Again, a product engineer probably, depending on the significance of the research, probably wouldn't be sharing something like this. But if they were, then the hashtag should really be tailored to the piece of content. So it's a piece of market research. So hashtag market research, something along those lines, and not just for canary.io company hashtags. Okay. Sorry, Brad, you're going to...
I was going to say, I haven't seen the one that you've corrected or the one that you've done, but I can tell you just a couple of things that... is it worth me saying what I would have done differently? Or
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Well, the immediate thing is obviously removing the new research. And if we're curating this piece of content for the engineer, engineers typically are analytical people and we're sharing research. So, you might say, as an engineer, I love sharing data-driven insights. That would be something like that as my scroll stopper. Yeah. And then you can go into, we released this research. But the other thing that bugs me about this is the stock image.
Super plain, super boring.
Yeah, it's far too PowerPoint, and it as a trigger. If we think about like things like the Pavlov's dog type thing. Anything that has a stock image on it immediately makes me not want to look at it because I just assume it's someone just trying to sell me something. I know it's not real because I know that image isn't real. Where if it was a team picture or, okay, we're talking about research, I don't know what the research would be, but if the research was around, I don't know, if we're using the Norwich football thing, if it was a research around the youth academy going into Premiership football, I'd rather have a picture of a youth team as the picture and it be a real one. But that's just my own bugbear, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely, completely agree. And again, for anybody that's just listening, it's somebody just essentially working through a load of papers, wearing a white shirt, looks very stock imagey. I think stock images can work. Obviously, they've come a long way since stock images like this first came about. These are obviously very recognizable, very corporate, and not at all engaging. There are better stock images out there, so you don't have to go and design a load of images when you want to share a piece of content or when you want your employees to share it, but just definitely be selective with the stock images that you're choosing, because there's way more engaging, much more colorful images out there to choose from.
Okay, well, I won't go into too much because I reckon you're probably going to have a lot of this covered, so we can proceed.
Yeah, of course. So Betty Plenty of Marties, it is Betty Plenty of Mates, for anybody that's, again, that's not watching, is a data analyst at canary.io. So her post, I'll try and get through this as quickly as possible. It's very happy to see this come together. It's got an emoji in there with hands raised. I'm unbelievably proud to be a part of this team, and I'm so glad this vision finally became a reality. Canary's maiden research piece is just released, and the findings could and should cause some serious shake-up in the industry. The data speaks to buyer behaviours that we've witnessed since the pandemic, and the macroeconomic outlook proves to be more positive than experts previously claimed. So right off the bat, and then there's 3 hashtags in there as well, which are all relevant to Betty's field. So it's talking about economic research, data analytics, and macroeconomics. But right off the bat, just the tone of voice of this caption is much more personal. So Betty's referring to the fact that she is part of this team. It's content that's relevant to her. She's saying she's worked on it and she's happy to see it come together. It's not just, we're delighted to announce this is now available for you to download and read. Initially, so the hook that we've gone for with this one is Betty just saying very happy to see this come together. The reason I went for this is people, generally speaking, like to celebrate their network's wins on LinkedIn. I think that's a nice way of getting people's attention. So I've gone with that just because I think if Betty's worked on this, her network might be more likely to comment if they can see it's something that she's worked on and to kind of congratulate her for it. And then she's pulled out some key insights as well. So just speaking about the fact that the data speaks to buyer behaviours. I've made all of this up, by the way. I'm not an economist, and I really wouldn't ever claim to be an expert.
Spoiler alert.
Macroeconomics. I'll do the marketing, but I'll let those guys handle the data. But yeah, she's essentially pulled out a few key findings from it. So it's just teeing it up. so that people are more likely to read the full report.
So I would say the things I would have added to this would have been the image. I probably would have looked for one of the images from the research paper, the one that gave a little bit of a teaser, like you said, making it the trailer. So give someone that insight in feed, so they want more of it. So give them something so you can say, actually, this is quite valuable or surprising. I bet there's loads more insights in that, and I want to go and find out more. And the post caption, the title is far more interesting as well. I don't know if you already said that, but the post captions, the link title, so we know where we're going and what it's called, is far more interesting as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to pull out the image. So I've gone for a darker image because, generally speaking, if you look at the data, more people actually use LinkedIn in standard modes than using dark mode. So if you want a piece to stand out, don't go for a white image. It's just not going to stand out in the feed. So I've gone for a black image here with a bit of color in it. But obviously, because this is a fabricated post, Canary isn't a real company. There's no images to pull from here. So this is all just obviously fraudulent and not fraudulent, but it's fake. But yeah, obviously bear that in mind when you're curating links. You need to go with an engaging image as well, because the caption does a job of the trailer, but ultimately the image is going to be the largest thing that people are going to see in their feed from that post. So if you've got an engaging image and an engaging post caption as well, then you've got kind of like the recipe for success when it comes to getting people to click on your links. Sorry, Brad.
Yeah, I think when I was preparing for this episode, I was looking at random companies that aren't clients of ours. So one of them was JCB, and I was looking at their press releases. I don't know anything about, I don't even know what category that would be, large machinery. And I could see that if you were just curating their content really quickly, it would be very technical and really easy to to fill LinkedIn with jargon. But actually, when I started reading about some of their products, it was actually really interesting. So they were talking about, fully electric, like the cost of fuel and how that impacts construction. And so there was loads of information in there that actually, if a friend of mine had sent me that link framed around, oh, did you know they're doing this and now they're using electric and how good it is for the planet and blah, 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 blah. Even if I'm not a buyer for machinery, I would have found that interesting. If they had just put on LinkedIn, we're really excited to launch our X1589 plant presser, I would have gone, I don't know what any of what you just said is, so pass. And I think even people in the industry probably would have that same challenge, because not everybody's going to be clued up on, the model numbers and the granular detail in products. So I think it's like all marketing. Have empathy for the person that you're trying to get to click that link, and when you're reading the content, whether it's native content, it's a video, ask yourself as somebody, and if you work in marketing, you probably aren't an expert in your product, like no disrespect, but you're probably an expert in marketing and you got a job at JCB. You weren't a construction engineer that then decided to become a marketeer. Possibly, but probably unlikely. So ask yourself the question, what do I personally find interesting about that? And that's the thing that you should put on the post, not granular specs. And it's like the old thing about the iPod when it came out. It didn't talk about how many gig the product had. It talked about how many songs you could store on it. Think more like that, and then it's going to be far more palatable for people when they're actually engaging with the content.
Definitely. Yeah, it all comes down to time as well, right? Like, it sounds like a bit of work to kind of go through what you've just mentioned, but at the end of the day, you've put the time in to select a vendor for your employee advocacy program, to find a tool. You've put the time into launching it and onboarding people. You don't want to drop the ball when it actually comes to the execution, which is curating your content. So if it means curating a piece of content takes 10 minutes instead of 2 to 3, it's worth it, because the end product is your content gets more clicks. So.
And one of the things we've spoken about loads is this idea of putting your advocate at the center of your program. So seeing them as your customer and the person that you're serving. So if you think about the service we're providing to them, can you go back to the other post?
Of course.
As an advocate, if I'm looking at this and just being completely brutal and really kind of essentially saying it how it is, how people would view this. As an advocate, immediately I'm going, I'm not saying that. Everyone's going to know that's not me. That makes me look insincere, and actually, okay, maybe I'm now going to change it. I'll change the text, and then it will look like me. How do I, as a non-marketing person who's not a copywriter, take that text and make it sound like me? Because I'd have to delete it and start from scratch, right? If you now go to your second post, and if I use me as the example, okay, I probably wouldn't say unbelievably proud. I would say pleased, right? So I'm going to delete unbelievably proud. I'm going to change it to pleased. I'm pleased to be a part of this team, right? Because maybe but maybe if I was a really super excitable person, I might change the adjective to be something else. So this is far more easy for me to make it sound like me because it's in a structure that I can adapt. The one before, that's a delete, and then I've got that white screen and infinite possibilities, and then that procrastination would basically just mean that I would exit out and say, I'm not using that advocacy thing anymore because it's too much work. As where altering this would take me 2 seconds.
Yeah, exactly that. And you have to take that into account as well when you're curating the content yourself. So if you're somebody who's curating content for your colleagues to share, once you've got this one post written, it's very easy to turn this into 5 separate unique posts. Maybe you'll change the hook opener, so they're very happy to see this come together, that opening line that Betty's got here. You could change that and then just tweak maybe some of the emojis or something along those lines, and you've then got 2 different posts already. It's very easy to turn one post into 5 once you've got one good post written. So it's not even that you need to repeat this process of putting together the acronym that we spoke about at the beginning, PACT. It's not that you have to write 5 packed posts. It's just you write one and then you can tweak that, and before you know it, you've got 5 great posts that your employees can share, as opposed to, Billy No Mates over here with the first post where nobody's going to click on it, and like you've spoken about, Brad, chances are nobody's going to want to share it either because they don't want to be seen to be sharing that.
One final thing that I find really funny about what you've done here when you made these posts is that you've Betty, Plenty of Mates, has liked Billy's.
Yeah.
So, which I think is some kind of power move. Like, she knows the text is better, but she's saying, I'm going to help this guy out. He's only got 1 like, which is probably himself, the Obama giving himself a medal thing, and then she's pitied him and given him 1 like. So I like what you've done there.
Mate, Betty is considered part of the furniture at Canary.io, and it's always there to support her colleagues. And Billy is just wishing that he could be as good as Betty. So I thought it was important to throw that in. And obviously these are fake, but the likes are thrown in there as well to kind of to show that difference in the quality of posts.
Great, thank you, Lewis. I think that was super informative. Another long episode, even though it was part 2, but this is something that is so strategically valuable if you're running an employee advocacy program. So obviously feel free to watch the entire episode again if you feel the need to. So I'm going to close the show off with 2 things. Firstly, I want to say a big please to submit reviews to the podcast, because it really helps not only our ranking, but it also just adds to the credibility of the podcast and help more people receive this great information like what Lewis has given us today. And the other thing that I wanted to ask was, we're very, very close now to releasing our book, and we're thinking it will be available to buy in September. However, what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you want to receive one of the original copies from me, send me a LinkedIn request. You don't need to send me some long message. Just say, I'd love a copy of the book. And then when it's available, we'll actually send you a physical copy of the book as part of the initial distribution. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. And we'll see you on the next episode.